Hi, it's great to see all of you here today and welcome to the Shindig training session. I'll be reviewing all of the main features here of the admin panel. But first, just to emphasize this fact, remember the most important part of your event will be the 15 minutes before the event starts. That's when you or someone from your team is going to welcome and greet your attendees. Just as in in-person events, welcoming your guests is an important part of setting the tone for a great event. As you'll see later, there are a number of slides and tutorial videos you might share with the audience as they begin to assemble that help explain the Shindig interface. Likewise, as part of your welcome, you might have team members working the crowd as it is, saying hi to people individually and making sure they're comfortable. Similarly, you might open a podium like this, call out new arrivals and have them come to the stage to say hi to everyone, or otherwise use the various tools at your disposal to engage the audience. Now, I'm going to go ahead and begin by showing you a quick slide deck and review with you a couple of important things about Shindig from the audience perspective. What you're looking at right now is a slide of Shindig in the default display from the audience perspective. In this particular display, you'll see the stage area on the top and the audience section below. One thing that's really important to know about Shindig is that it's designed specifically to emulate an in-person event as closely as possible. So there's a stage area and the communication is one way to the audience. So while you're in the audience, I'm not going to be able to hear what you're saying up here. And that's by design. This affords Shindig greater security and control and allows us to handle events with thousands of participants without having to worry about audience members unmuting themselves. When you're on stage and presenting to an audience, it feels a little bit more like being in a broadcast studio than it does on an open mic Zoom call. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen, you have your toolbar. That is where the audience is going to signal to the host for attention, text chat with other participants, vote, set their privacy, and more. And we'll get into a couple of those other functions in a little bit. One thing I wanted to point out, though, that will be relevant to the admin panel discussion is the fact that Shindig's audience is grouped into segments. As opposed to seeing all of up to 1,000 attendees on your screen at one time, when the audience grows above 30 attendees, arrows will appear to the right and left of your screen that allow you to scroll through different sections of the audience at about 30 at a time. When you pan the audience by clicking the arrows, the stage will remain the same, but the thumbnails of the other attendees on your screen will change for the thumbnails in the next section over. In addition to being able to pan through the audience, you can also open up your Participants tab. That's going to be on the far left side of your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Here, you'll notice if you open up this tab, you'll see everyone in a nice neat grid. There are two headings you'll see, On My Screen and Other Participants. Under On My Screen, you'll see all of those same people that you just saw on your audience section in the audience view. Under Other Participants, you're going to see every other person in the event. So just because you can only see those people on your screen at one time does not mean you can't access all the people in the entire event. And then finally, on the far right here, you have a group text chat. One thing that's important to note, and this is going to be relevant later when we look at the admin panel, this particular group chat is limited to only those people who are under the On My Screen heading. So while you can private text anyone in the event, group text is only shared with those who you see on your screen. This is done to prevent anyone from attempting to hijack the event, engage in antisocial behavior, waterfall chat bombing, or otherwise sending inappropriate content to the entire 1,000-person event. And then finally, you'll notice again, if you use the search field on the Participants tab, your search results will populate for both those people under the On My Screen heading and those in the entire event. So even if you don't see someone that you want to talk to in your section of the audience, you can always search for them and then hover over their thumbnail under the Other Participants tab and click the prompt that says video or text chat when it pops up. So again, these are just really important pieces of context that will make sense when we go through the admin panel in a moment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to open up a couple of podiums. So once I've gotten started, if anyone has any questions, feel free to hop up on a podium and ask away. Okay, so what you're seeing now is my view of the admin panel on Shindig. There are three main sections of the Shindig admin panel. The first is the stage area, which is signified by this orange box up here. The next is the broadcast pod, and that's going to be this gray rectangle on the right. And then finally we have the admin toolbar. So the admin toolbar is down here on the bottom. I'm going to start with the broadcast pod, and I'm going to walk through each one of the buttons one by one. One thing I'd also like to note is that because I'm on the stage right now, there's a fifth button that's disappeared. But if I was off stage, you would see it appear at the top here, and it would say broadcast. This broadcast button allows the admin to broadcast their own video feed to the stage. That button is what I clicked in order to join the stage today and present to you all. And when you're an admin, you would only click that button if you'd like to join the stage and take the stage yourself and address the entire event. The next button we have here is the Select File button. In Shindig, you're going to be able to preload all of your content assets through the Event Manager platform. You can also load assets using this Load File button here, either pre-event or on the fly during the event. Note, as it takes some time to load the files, especially video. Preloading them is recommended. All of those preloaded assets are going to live under your Select File button. You'll see here, when I click on Select File, I have this menu that pops up with 5 different tabs on it. You'll notice that the tabs are sorted by file type. For slides, you can use PDF, JPEG, PNG, or GIF or GIF as you see fit. Shindig unfortunately doesn't support PowerPoint or Keynote, so presenters will need to convert their presentation to a PDF. If you want to preserve the animations of the presentation or don't want to turn the presentation over to the host, you can always take the stage and share your screen. We do recommend that you use a PDF because screen share may not always be crisp visibly on low bandwidth, mobile devices, or devices with limited CPU. To broadcast a PDF to the stage, click once on the PDF you'd like to broadcast and then click the Broadcast button in the bottom left corner here. When you're in full screen view like you are now, you'll get another prompt that'll ask you to place the piece of content on stage in the position that you'd prefer. When you're in default display, which is how we started the meeting, it will automatically populate to see the next available position. So you'll see here, we put the content on stage, and now our PDF is loaded at the top. I have arrows that allow me to tab through the presentation as such, and either I as the admin can advance the slides, or the featured speaker on the stage who is giving the presentation may also advance the slides if they prefer. Something else I'd like to just cover quickly is our different display views. So what we're in right now is called full screen emphasis mode, which displays one podium in an emphasized position to the right, and your remaining podiums in a smaller position to the left. Note in the pod to your right, you see my face presenting this tutorial here in the emphasis position. The orange border here reflects the area seen by the attendees, and this area fully occupies their screens. You'll notice in emphasis mode, you can very easily drag and drop content into the emphasis position. And it functions as a very simple broadcast switcher with 2 other full screen displays. The first is going to be equal display in full screen, which as you can see shows you all of your podiums on stage in the same size. And then we have our new close-up screen view, which embraces the full screen area, cropping off the sides of your video and providing more of a close-in shot. Close-up view offers less of the distracting background and more of the focus on the person speaking. The tall upright rectangle will be familiar to those who rely mostly on their mobile devices for video chat and like to use the vertical aspect ratio. This is an exciting innovation for Shindig that none of the other platforms offer. Note, this view adjusts to content, and it allows you to emphasize one pod within the array by clicking on the close-up icon. When you have a panel, it can be really fun to use this view. And then finally, we have our default display. Default display is going to be your audience view. So when you're in default display, you have all of your podiums across the top of your screen, and you're able to see your audience below. So we'll go back to full screen here. To remove a piece of content from the stage, click the Stop Broadcast button in the middle. The next thing we have over here is our Music tab. You can upload music files as MP3. Broadcast process is the same. You'll notice here that I have some volume controls. So if I come over here, I have an audience output volume control and then my own volume control as an admin for when I'm doing things like talking to other fellow admins or talking to the guests backstage while the event is going on. This function is useful for having music on in the background and allows you to set the mood and adjust the volume to exactly the level that you feel is most appropriate. I have the ability to pause the music in place and then restart it from the place I paused it. The reason we have this audience output button here is you may want to turn down the music so it functions more like soft background music as opposed to a performance. To do so is very simple. You just use the slider and drag it down to the percentage level that you'd like the output to be at. Remember, the volume will then go down even further for attendees who engage in private chats. To remove a piece of content from the stage, press the stop button. The next file type we have is a video file. Video must be MP4, as not all browsers support other file formats. The file size should be under 250 megabytes to ensure that all mobile devices are able to receive the progressive download. While preloaded files utilizing progressive downloads are typically limited to 5 minutes or less, as you will see in a minute, there are other ways to play back pre-recorded videos that offer far superior resolution than the screen share option that other major platforms rely on. So when you want to play a file in Shindig, you click the same broadcast process. You'll notice that you have all of the same tools that you did on the audio playback. Same exact functions, the pause button, your volume controls, that's all here. Note, if your MP3 has a title card graphic, this will show instead of the equalizer. Likewise, if you prefer some other graphic to fill the visual area of the pod being used for music, we suggest you convert that MP3 to an MP4 format and add your preferred sequence of graphics to the converted video. Again, to remove it from the stage, simply click that stop button. Beyond the native file types that you've already uploaded, you can also bring in HTML iframe embedded codes from a third-party app into Shindig. This could be a YouTube video or Google form or maybe even a slideshow poll. Here's an example of how to bring that iframe code in. You'll go to the third-party app, set up whatever game or poll or video that you'd like to share with Shindig, find the sharing function in that app, and copy the iframe embed code. Bring that into Shindig and go into Select File, then click the HTML tab. You'll give your code a title or a nickname here, then you'll paste the code into the code field below and click Add or Save. So it's going to say Add when you first add the code. If you're editing the code, it'll say Save like I have it right now. Then the broadcast process is the same as the other content. You'll click once to highlight, and then you'll click the broadcast button. Now, you'll place the content on the stage if you're in full screen view. You'll notice here that we have a slideshow poll, and that any of this content that you bring in via the iframe embed code is going to be interactive for every single member of the audience independently. Which means that if I put this poll on stage with Slido, every single one of you is going to be able to give his or her response to the poll. Once you give your answer, you'll also be able to see the result in real time. As I mentioned before, if you have a big video file that you want to present, bringing it in here from the source like YouTube will still provide vastly better quality than the quality of screen share video playback. If you want to play a video via YouTube, the iframe embed code is going to be much better quality than if you try to screen share that same video. Other applications might be games, photo booths, Twitter streams to show comments in the Twitter sphere if you're broadcasting your event. If you have someone on your team who's good with coding or understands how to adjust those codes, you can have an entire embedded website in one of these broadcast pods.
Question. So would we then be able to put up our donation page and have individuals interact with it individually and actually give a donation at that time?
Good question. You could acquire an iframe embed code from a site like GoFundMe, or you could simply add a call to action link for your donation page. So I'm going to come out of full screen for a minute, and you will see these two buttons in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. One should say engage with our sponsor, and the other should say take our survey. These are customizable buttons that can lead to any external URL. So you could simply have one of those buttons say Donate Now with a link to a donation page of your choosing. Moving on. Finally, we've got a Tutorials tab here. So tutorials are going to be preloaded into every single Shindig event room. You might have noticed some of them when you first logged in. This pre-event socializing tutorial is one of our favorites, and we highly recommend using these in the 15 minutes before the event starts, so that your attendees have a little bit more of the information before your host joins the stage. We also recommend having an MC or host as part of that 15 minutes prior to the event, as people are first starting to log in. This is going to allow the attendees to become more comfortable engaging with one another so that they will all be primed to engage with your presentation. There are all sorts of tutorials, and you can come into the room from the admin side and play around with any of these at any point to see what we have in there. But there is one video that I'd like to show you now that's preloaded in all of our rooms, and that's our pre-event instruction video. So I'm going to play that for you really quick so that you understand the asset. We recommend either playing this video a couple times in those 15 minutes before the event starts, or having a host on stage communicating some similar information. So I'm going to let this play really quick, and then we'll keep going. Hi, it's so great to see all of you. We'll be starting in just another couple minutes, but I wanted to check in to make sure we're all set for this presentation. Shindig was intentionally chosen for this event in order to maximize your participation, allowing you to make your own contributions, privately network with fellow attendees, or even join the stage with principal speakers. With that in mind, let's make sure your microphone and camera are all set. For desktop and laptop users, make sure you've allowed your browser access. If the system failed to detect your camera and microphone, click on the gear in the upper right-hand corner and choose the microphone and camera you're most comfortable with. If you're still having a problem, try to refresh your browser. If an issue persists, quit all other applications that might have access to your camera and microphone. Quit your browser and then re-enter the event using the same browser, or you can use a different one. Mobile users, you've got nothing to worry about. Your camera and mic will turn on automatically as needed. So one more time, if you want to engage in a private conversation with another attendee, simply click on the participant's image, introduce yourself, and enjoy the event together. Your host will be with you shortly. Have fun! Something that's important to know about Shindig is that it does require a decent amount of CPU to be available on your computer in order to admin an event. So make sure that you don't have Zoom, Teams, or video editing or any other CPU-intensive software open in the background that might bog down your performance for playing back videos. If something does slow down your playback performance, close out all of the unnecessary programs and refresh your browser. Refreshing one's connection is often the solution to local issues a user may encounter due to random interruptions in their connectivity that they're not aware of. Alright, so moving on. The next button we've got here in this pod is the Enable Open Podium button. I can enable an open podium just as I have for you here, and that's going to allow anyone from the audience to come to the stage, first come, first serve. You might want to use an open podium if you wanted to have an open Q&A session with someone on stage, or if you had a smaller, more intimate group of people who were all really comfortable with one another, and you were fine with anyone joining the stage to address the entire group. For a more produced event, you will want to run the show a little tighter and make sure that no one joins the stage at will. In this scenario, you might not want to use an open podium, but instead use what we call spotlighting, which I'll show you just as soon as we get down to the admin toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And then finally, we've got our Start Voting button. So when I click Start Voting, it's going to bring a vote tabulator onto the stage. This initiates a show of hands straw poll. So you may notice in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen, there's a hand icon. When this tabulator is on stage, that turns the hand icon into a way to register a vote. So you might use this in a situation where you want a simple show of hands answer to a question. So a good example might be, hey everybody, by a show of hands, how many of you are looking to host virtual events that are more than just Zoom calls? Then have your audience respond by clicking the hand icon, and I'll just give you a moment here to respond. Excellent! As you can see, it registers as a percentage of the total audience of people who have raised their hand. When you're ready to be done with the poll, simply click Finish Voting, and you can see the final tally here. Note that you will have an audit trail of all votes taken for each poll within Shindig, which can be found within the post-event section of the Event Manager. If you want a more robust poll, we recommend using a third-party app like Slido, as I showed you before. And that's going to be everything in your broadcast pod. So moving on to the admin toolbar. Okay, first tab in the admin toolbar is the Overview tab. The Overview tab is where you'll see a thumbnail of every single attendee in the event. On rollover, I see a name tag, and then when I click on someone's name tag, here I can get their user card. On the user card, there are a number of different functions. So I'm going to go top to bottom and explain each one. The X obviously closes out the card. The button to the left of the X is the refresh button. So just as I refreshed my browser to reestablish my connection, if any one of your attendees at any point is having trouble seeing something on screen, maybe their internet connection goes out for a minute, the best way to reestablish their connection to the platform is for them to refresh their browser. If you can't communicate that instruction to them, you could always come here, search for their name, and refresh their browser feed for them by clicking that refresh button. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds. Again, this will solve about 99% of the issues that a user will experience within Shindig. Below that, we have a name tag. So you may have noticed that when you joined the room today, you entered your title and your organization into the login fields. Those login fields are customizable, and they become searchable within the event. So if I were to type Boulder Consulting into the search field, I would see Ryan's results coming up right here. And we can see Ryan is the only one left, showing that this metadata is made searchable within your event if you prefer. Below that, we have a bandwidth reading. Bandwidth will probably range greatly amongst your attendees. It is dynamic and can go up and down depending on your service provider, your router and Wi-Fi, shared usage on your connection, and plenty of other factors. The bandwidth here is a reading of when you entered the event, and it is not adjusted over the course of the event. In order to make sure the reading is more accurate to the user's current levels, click the dial icon to initiate a fresh bandwidth test. With that in mind, green or teal reflects an excellent connection. Gold indicates a poor connection and possibly someone who you would want to vet in order to ensure that their connectivity is adequate before bringing them onto stage. The red indicates someone who has a very low-grade connection. Shindig will optimize the video for those with poor bandwidth connection so that they can, at the very least, hear everything on stage and perhaps view some low-quality video. But it may not be able to rectify their ability to stream themselves. Again, those who have red bandwidth should be checked before bringing them onto stage. To avoid the vagaries of routers and Wi-Fi, which are a substantial cause of low bandwidth performance, it's highly recommended that high-value guests and speakers use a hardwired internet connection, and for them to have a tech check in order to test both the bandwidth connection that they will be using during the event and their local device in order to make sure neither present any last-minute issues that were not anticipated beforehand. All right, and so below we've got 3 buttons. These 3 buttons are going to come up a number of times, so I want to quickly go through them. The first is a text chat button. So text chat allows me to send a message to anyone in the audience. It's a private text message. I can also adjust the size of this text box and move it anywhere on my screen. And I can add other users to the text chat. And I can add any other user or fellow admin to the text chat by clicking this plus sign here. So now I'm going to add Mike to the chat and say hello. Now we've got a 3-way private chat going. Here's how it shows up on a participant's screen. Note that it is front and center for attendees and cannot be confused with other messages in their general text box. Here's how it looks on mobile. We recommend using this text chat feature for production notes in the event. And then also, if you have an MC or a moderator on stage, we recommend having a chat open with one of them so that you can communicate with them. Feed them vetted questions from the audience, or you give them non-audible private cues that the audience will not hear. Beyond that, we've got 2 other buttons. The first is going to be a sidebar. So the sidebar button initiates a private admin video chat with the attendee. We use these sidebars as green rooms or a virtual backstage that allows you to prepare your speakers before you push them up on the stage. When you sidebar someone, it looks a little bit like this. Here, I've clicked the sidebar, and now as an admin, I'm seeing the video chat pop up on my screen. I have the ability to move this around to any location on my screen. I can also add multiple users to this backstage chat. Now that I've talked to this person in the private chat, they're ready to go on stage and give their presentation. And I can hover over their video feed and click on the spotlight button, which will send them directly to the stage. There are two ways to spotlight someone, and I'll show you the second way in just a second. The best way to do this is to spotlight them directly from that private chat video so that you can check on them and prepare your speakers before they go on stage. So in a backstage situation, you may say to a potential speaker, "Okay, great. Your video looks good, your bandwidth looks good, your audio sounds really great. We're ready to send you up on stage." When you find yourself on stage, your video feed will be live at the top of your screen, and you'll be presenting to the entire audience. Knock 'em dead. At that point, I would click the spotlight button. Once I click the spotlight button, they will see their image move to the stage with a superimposed 3, 2, 1 countdown indicating the exact moment when they will go live. Then I would have the option to either swap a podium out for one that's already on stage, or I could add a new podium to the stage. If I choose to swap out a podium, I just have to make sure that I click on the podium that I want to swap after I choose the swap option. Alright, I do want to point out that you can also spotlight someone directly from the user card here. So you might spotlight someone in this case if you've already prepared them. They know they're going to be brought up on stage soon, and you want to send them back to the audience and not hold them in the chat. Maybe they had raised their hand to signal that they wanted to be brought up. Maybe you've been text chatting with them or spoke with them previously, or maybe you're cold calling a student or expect all the attendees to be ready to contribute at any moment in time. So that's the spotlight function. One thing I also wanted to point out is we mentioned audience segments earlier. Here is a quick slide that shows you what the admin panel looks like when we have a bunch of people in the event. For an event with more than a couple hundred participants, you will want to maximize the audience view from time to time to be able to scan the entire audience for up to 1,000. You'll notice that the Overview tab looks a little different when you have 150 people in your event. You can see the different audience sections reflected by those gray rectangles. Inside those rectangles, you'll see the little clusters of attendee thumbnails to indicate that those are people who are connected together in a private group chat. You'll also see question marks and hand icons appear over anyone who has either raised their hand or asked a text question. You'll see here that we have Christine, Karen, and Brittany. They're all connected in a private video chat. Okay, moving on. So we've got our Raised Hands tab, and the Raised Hands tab is going to be where you see a list of anyone who's raised their hands. In addition to being able to use that raised hand icon to vote for these polls, you could also raise your hand to indicate to the admin that you might need some support, or that you'd like to join the stage to ask a question. If someone would like to click the raised hand icon, I can show you what that looks like here. Remember, in the Tutorials tab, I have these slides that you can use to teach members how to use the raised hands icon. Perfect. Thank you so much. So you'll see here that we have everybody with raised hands in a queue. And we get the same information that we saw on the previous page. Raised hands is timestamped and brings people up ordered by when they raise their hands, making it a perfect tool for games or auctions as well. Next tab we have here is the Questions tab. So if at any point in the event you would like your attendees to submit written questions, they are welcome to do so by clicking the question mark button in the toolbar. Those questions will populate in this tab much in the same way that they did for the Raised Hands tab. You'll be able to engage with those questions and even publish them on screen. As with the Raised Hands tab, the tutorial tabs contain slides I can bring up to advise the audience members on how to use the question icons as well. So if someone wants to submit a test question, I'd be more than happy to show you what that looks like. All right, so as you can see, we have all of the same information as before, but with a couple of new additions. Here we have the text of the question itself, and then there are two new buttons. The copy button will allow me to copy the text of the question, maybe to put it in a document for later, or maybe to send to my moderator on stage so that they can ask the question themselves. So the text question copy shows up just like this. Then finally, we can publish the question and adjust the amount of time that it remains on the screen. Now I'll publish the question, and you can see the text of the question pop up here along with an attribution and thumbnail of the person who asked that question. Mike, to answer your question, it's randomly assigned to the participant as they enter the event. Only attendees can change who is in the audience sections by scrolling through and entering the different sections themselves. There may be a time when you or a speaker on stage might want to call something out to the audience in a similar manner with bold type for all to see, but there wasn't time beforehand to create a slide for such. For those instances, there is an announcement feature which functions more like the question function, but for admin notifications like this. Hey everybody, here's a link to the article I just mentioned. Note, I can also repost prior announcements. Just use previous and post. Here are all my social links. Please follow me. All right, moving on. The next tab we have here is the text chat. You'll see here we've got this all participant waterfall text chat. This is going to be where the admin can monitor every single public chat that's going on in different audience segments. And then the admin can also send a group-wide or an event-wide message here. So if I send a hello message, every single attendee is going to see that message. Again, this is where you can monitor all of the chats here and send messages out to everybody. The next tab we have here is the recording and streaming tab. So it is very easy to start a recording. Simply press the green triangle or start button here and you'll see the recording icon turn red and say recording on to indicate that your recording is indeed on. If you'd like your recording to only show the content from the stage, you can check the record/stream in full screen box. That means that only the content you're presenting on stage will show up in the recording. If you'd like your recording to reflect the different views that you're choosing to see as an admin and see the audience when you choose default display, keep this box unchecked. So when this box is unchecked, my recording will mirror exactly the different displays that I set as an admin. So right now, it will reflect full screen emphasis. And then if I move to default, it would also show the same default view and I'd be able to see my audience in the recording. You can note that in general, you should not have to ever start the recording yourself as the system default is set to starting 2 minutes before the official start time. If the recording is already started, you will see the recording on indicator turn green. If you need to start a recording because you turned the recording off or set the event manager to do not record, then it's easy to do so right here. Okay, below that we have our streaming tab. In order to start streaming, you're going to need to have the recording on first. Now, once you've done that, you can send your stream out to a number of different third-party platforms that we have built in. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. But you can also use the Facebook Live external port to stream out to sites like Twitch or Vimeo. To do so, initiate a stream on the third-party platform and copy the server URL and the stream key from the platform itself. And then paste that into the respective areas in the tab that you'd like to stream out to. And then click the Create Live Stream button. Once you've done so, this gray dot here will turn red to signify that the signal is being sent out to the third-party platform, at which point you would return to the platform to publish the stream live. You can also create an overflow stream for your audience right here by clicking Create Live Stream, so that if more than 1,000 people were to come to your event, those people over the 1,000 would be able to see a free live stream of the event when they try to log in. This stream will also share the same URL as those who are participating in the event. The advantage of such overflow streaming capacity is that, unlike overflow viewers being directed to social media, you still capture name and email and potentially other info on the overflow audience of your Shindig, and such viewers show up on your event manager reporting pages. Alternatively, You can also create a cascade of shindigs to create an event of tens of thousands, but that's in another presentation. To stop recording or streaming, press the gray stop button here. And then finally, we have our Advanced tab. The Advanced tab has 3 functions. The first is going to be the house lights. So when I bring the house lights down, you'll notice that it gradually fades out the background and audience to black, just as if the house lights in a theater were dimmed or turned down. So you might use this in a situation where you have a networking session at the beginning of your event, and then you'd like to draw your audience's full attention to the stage because the main keynote or presentation is about to begin. So you might come on stage and say, all right, everybody, it's time to wrap up your conversations. The program's about to begin. We're bringing the house lights down. At this point, no one will be able to join new private video chats, but they will be able to remain in any that they were currently in. To re-engage the private video chats, bring the house lights all the way back up to 100%. Next to this, we have compressed and expanded views of the Shindig audience. If you'd like a larger audience view, you can click Expand, which will give the audience a little more space on the screen. Otherwise, you'll want to stay in the default compressed view. Expanded view is great for clicking on individuals. Compressed view is more crowded, but it does allow more people on screen at once. Choose the array that best suits the aesthetic that you're going for. Then you have the dynamic control of call to action display. This enables you to strategically trigger calls to action when they are most impactful. So at the best moment for your specific presentation, you can direct participants to the button saying, donate now, buy my book, engage with our sponsors, take our survey, or whatever other call to action you might wish to direct them to. Remember, these call to actions are easily added before the event in the Event Manager, so they are ready to trigger for display whenever you want during the event for maximum impact and engagement. Note, you can run these serially, emphasizing different calls at different times, and or display a range of calls to action as appropriate at different moments for the event, including a return to the lobby for when at a conference you want session participants to return to a general social space to choose with fellow attendees what panel, breakout, or related event in your conference they might want to attend next. And finally, we have Banned User. If someone joins your event and is causing problems or is acting inappropriately, and you'd like to remove them, enter their name here. Confirm that you have the correct identity of the offender, and then click on their icon to remove them from the event. 2 other quick things I'd like to point out on the admin panel. Your settings menu is going to be located on rollover of your own admin thumbnail, and you're going to be able to click here to open it. It'll look the same as the settings menu for the guest side. It's just located in a different place. Top left is the camera, middle top is your audio input, and then top right is your audio output. You can also look at your bandwidth here, and you can adjust your video quality. The Shindig system will lower the quality of poor bandwidth users automatically. If someone feels this was done in error and wants to adjust it or reset it after having taken steps to improve a temporary degradation in bandwidth, they can come here to do so.
I have just a quick question. For the admin, do you recommend, is that one person managing the back end and running the show?
Yeah, good question. So you can have up to 4 people on the back managing the show at the same time. It depends on how complex your event is. If you have a very simple event and there's not a whole lot of people coming up on stage, you may only need 1 or 2 admins. However, during a complex program, you might want 3 or 4 admins checking on audience members for tech support and preparing speakers in the green room backstage before they go live.
Okay, thanks.
Finally, we have some minimize and maximize buttons on the right here. Minimize the admin toolbar to give yourself a better view of the stage, or maximize the toolbar to see more attendees in the overview tab. I generally like to keep it in the middle so that I can see both. You do have these options here. Let's now move on to accessing your event reporting by going back to the Event Manager portal you used to set up your event. So I'll now share my screen and show you Event Manager. Hopefully you all have already watched the Event Manager video, but if not, I'll quickly review how to get to the post-event reporting here. Here you see my past event statistics tab. Most of these headings are pretty self-explanatory. Note the columns are each sortable. The different reports go from RSVPs, which you may want to monitor for post-event messaging that would be different than those who attended. Viewers are those in the overflow who saw the stream. Attendees are those who attended the event, whether they RSVP'd or not beforehand. RSVP no-shows are those people who intended to come to your event but missed it. People who you may want to reach out to in some way. The reports show any metadata that you requested individuals fill in to the extent required. Here to the right, you'll also find any voting results that you had for the duration of the event. Your recording can help you if you forget which vote in the sequence was for which questions. You also can see a column with entries for any written questions that were submitted. So what you're seeing now is the Shindig account Event Manager. This is what you'll see when you first log into your account. It'll either be events that have been created or it'll be a blank page. Once you've created a bunch of events, they'll populate just like this. And you'll be able to see the date and the start time of those events in the order that they came in. Your upcoming events tab will be the first tab that you see. You can search for the name of an event right here. And then once your events are over, you can access them again and see the statistics for them by going into the past events tab. And then once your events are over, you can access them again and see the statistics for them by going into the past events tab. To create an event from scratch, you're going to click the Create Event button. We're going to skip over that for now because the interface looks exactly the same as the editor. Now I'm going to show you how to edit an event instead. There's another function we have and it's called Create Series. We're not going to be able to cover that today, but if anybody here wants to know how to create a series, please shoot me a follow-up email. Then we can get you some information on how to do so. You might want to use a series when you have a large number of breakout sessions or concurrent events that you'd like to be able to run at the same time. So this is really more for a conference or a large number of URLs that's running simultaneously. Okay, so let's edit an event. Let's go into my training room that we're in right now. To get to the edit menu, you'll click once. Now you'll see there are 6 buttons here that you get when you click on the drop-down. Now I'll go through these one by one. The first one is going to be the Enter button. Clicking on the Enter button opens up a new window with the login page for your event. So that's going to be your guest login page. You'll click Enter and then copy the URL from the new window that opens. This is going to be the URL that you send to your guests pre-event, which is about an hour before your scheduled start time. This page will serve as an RSVP page, and then 1 hour before your event time, it's going to change over to be an enter page or a login page. So that button is going to change from saying RSVP to enter the event. This is great because it allows you to send a single URL out to all of your attendees, and they don't need to use a separate one for registration and joining the event. The next button we have over here is the Admin Access button. This is where you click to open the admin login page. So I'll show you how to set your admins in just a moment when we go through the editor. But any of your admins for the event are going to log in through this page here. Next, we have our statistics page. You're going to see some general stats at the top. Visitors and identities. Visitors is the number of people who came to the event. Identities is the number of unique people who joined the event. You can see the number of RSVPs, average stay, the number of people who joined the stage to speak, the number of private video chats that were engaged with questions, votes, texts, and so on. Below that, you've got the individual tab. For more refined data, you're going to see an RSVP. No one's RSVP to this room yet, but you can see more. So if we go to the Attendees tab, you're going to see all of the people who've logged in. We've got name, email, the data that you entered on the login time, the date of entry, duration of stay. This is going to be the number of times someone had to refresh their feed, an upload and download bandwidth speed, as well as an indication of what browser someone's using. You're also going to get more detailed information. If you go to the detailed entry log, that also gives you your information like IP address and operating system and whether or not the attendees allowed their camera or microphone in the browser. You can also check all of this information for your admins. Beyond that, you've got questions. So this will show you any questions that were submitted during the event. And then any recordings that were done will show up under the Recordings tab. Simply press on the link here and it will start downloading to your desktop. If you uploaded a guest list here, you can check that list right here and see who's been loaded into the event. If you'd like to download a CSV file of any of your tabs, click on the tab you'd like to download and then click Download CSV button. So next we've got the Delete button. The Delete button is very simple. It deletes the event. And then the Copy button is going to allow you to create a carbon copy of your event. So the only things you'd need to change if you clicked Copy are the title, the subtitle, the URL, and the date and the time. Any preloaded content that you have from your event will automatically be loaded into the new room. And then finally, we have our Edit button. So once you have created an event, we'll click on Edit, and this is going to open the event editor. This will be the same page you see when you create a new event. It's just blank when you start. So we'll go through one by one. At the top, we've got our title and then our subtitle. The next thing we have down here is our URL extension. Every Shindig event is going to start with shindig.com/login/event, and then it'll be your custom extension. At the end, make sure this is all lowercase and with no spaces. Below that, we set our date and our time. To do so, we click once here to open the pop-up. We'll set the date first, then click OK. Then we set our hour and whether we're working in the AM or PM, and then we click OK. Then we set the minute. This time zone indicator right here is for your own internal use. Something important to note is that your event time will show up in whatever time zone the person is logging in from. So if I have a 5 p.m. event that is set in Eastern Standard Time, someone logging in from Los Angeles would see that the event starts at 2 p.m. Pacific Time. To the right here, we have event length. My room is set for 5,000 hours because it's a training room and it's always open. However, you're going to be able to set your event up to 24 hours. You can always come back in and edit the event at the end of the day if you need to use it for the next day by coming in and adjusting the time and changing it to a time in the future. My room is set for 5,000 hours because it's a training room and it's always open. Below that, we have our capacity. This indicates how many people you expect, but it's actually a hard capacity on the room. No more than that number of people listed here will be able to log in. So if you're expecting 500 people, we'd recommend setting this to at least 600 in case there are more than 500. Below that, we have the ability for a Shindig staff member to expand your event to have more than 4 podiums. This is reserved right now for the events that are under 200 attendees. So if you're having a small event and you'd like to have 6 podiums, please reach out to your Shindig representative and they'll be able to set that up for you. You do have the ability to do paid events on Shindig. You would just need to set it up this way. Set the ticket price in US dollars or euros. This will run through our PayPal paywall, so please let us know if you're doing a paid event in advance. Below that, we have the ability to restrict the event. So we're going to be able to restrict by Facebook or LinkedIn login, a promo code which essentially functions as a passcode, or the most secure option, which is a guest list. If you choose the guest list option, you'll need to bring a CSV file, and you'll upload it right here on the bottom right. You'll see right here that that file needs to be specifically formatted with emails in the left column, first names in the middle column, and last names in the right column. Each column should be titled at the top. The first column should say email, the second column should say first, and then the last column should say last. Above that, we've got our admin emails. This is where you can input all of the different admins that will be able to log in as an admin for your event. You can have up to 4 admins for each URL that you're running. And those admin emails can be generic. So admin1@shindig.com is not a real email address. It functions more like a username, so anyone could use this to log in. Below that, we've got our additional attendee information. These are the metadata fields that you fill out when you're logging into the event. You can make them required or optional. Then you can choose 2 fields to add to the name tag. I can have up to 8 fields here, but only 2 of them will display to be searchable in the event on the name tag. To take them off of the name tag, uncheck the box. To put them on the name tag, make sure the boxes are checked. Okay, moving on to the next page. This page is where you build your splash page. So at the top, we've got a custom banner that's 950 by 250 pixels. The file type needs to be JPEG or PNG. The logo below is going to be 400 by 400 pixels as a JPEG or PNG. One note here is to make sure that you don't put anything that's going to be cut off on the corners, because this displays as a circle on the login page. And then finally, you have your description editor. You can have custom text, custom links, images, and videos embedded from the internet. And you can choose the tools at the top here to format the text. Moving on, this is our final page of the Event Manager editor. So here at the top, we have our confirmation and reminder email generator. If you'd like to send confirmation or reminder emails to either your guest list or your RSVP list or both, you can indicate that at the top here. And then you can edit the emails that go out by using the edit in WYSIWYG right here. You'll see that we've got a preloaded message, but you can customize this however you'd like. You'll also note that anything that's here in brackets is going to pull from the field that you entered earlier in the event creation process. So name would pull from the title, so on and so forth. You can also set a reminder email, and you can edit it in the same way right here. You can also send multiple reminders and set how long before the event starts that your attendees will receive those reminder emails. If you don't want our system sending any emails, be sure to set this to Do Not Send. Finally, we've got a couple more features here. To set your backdrop in the event, click this button right here that says Upload Event Backdrop. This is going to be a JPEG or PNG file that's 1920 by 1080 pixels. You'll notice right now that we're using a black and white auditorium view. That's going to be our default backdrop. So if you choose not to upload a backdrop, that's what you'll get. Below that, you may have noticed that there are two buttons in the bottom left corner of my room right now. Those are custom URLs that you can set in Event Manager. So you'll see right here where it says Add Hot Button Interactive Link, I can add the text that I'd like the button to say. After that, I can add the URL that I'd like the button to be redirected to. In addition to being able to use our standard yellow buttons with the white text, you can also upload your own graphic image to appear as the button and put the URL below. We recommend that these graphics come in 150 by 50 pixels. Below that, you can preload all of your files in Shindig. And you'll see here where we've got a list of all the files that I've loaded into my room. One note about loading these files is that they won't save until you finish saving the event. So make sure that you upload these and then finish the event saving process. Okay, below that, we have the number of attendees in each audience segment. You can set this anywhere between 10 to 30, although we do recommend a number between 20 and 30. To the right, don't worry about this. You're going to want to leave this set. This allows you to monitor that public text chat that I showed you on the Text Chat tab on the admin panel. That's going to allow you to monitor all of the public chats in the event. So you'll want to leave this setting alone. Finally, when you first build your event, you'll notice that these three tick boxes on the top are checked. These first two display your event listing publicly on your website and our mobile app. If you'd not like for this to be displayed publicly, simply uncheck that box. Below that, we have a welcome slide. The welcome slide is going to be an auto-generated slide that looks something like this. It's going to pull from the banner image and the logo, and then the title and the subtitle that you entered. We recommend designing your own, but if you need it, it's there for you. Here we've got our privacy default. We recommend in most cases leaving your privacy default set to off, which will allow your attendees to easily join together in private video chats. If you're running an event where you want to make sure that everybody is asking each other permission before they join private video chats, you may want to turn your privacy default on. That's going to turn that lock on the right side of your toolbar on. This is going to require anyone to ask your permission before they join in a private video chat. To finish saving an event, click Done. You click Yes, and this message is going to indicate that your event has been updated and saved. Once you've done so, you'll be brought back into the main room. All right, I see I've got another question that's come in. So the question is from Judy. It says, if your session is 3 days, would you copy the event information or just change the date here and leave everything else the same? Well, it really depends on your specific context. I'm running an event right now where everyone wanted to see the same URL. So it makes it easy if you just use the same URL, and then you just reset it every night for the next morning. But if you had different event URLs and you had different programming and different content in all the same rooms, you may want to set up 3 different events. So it really just depends. All right, it's that easy. Thanks so much for joining us on this admin panel training session.